So we've been through the system now and you've seen it in live market scenarios. But what's important is that you know how to enter and exit for maximum results. So in this video, we're going to talk about scaling into trades and managing your stops so that you scale out effectively. All right, first of all, we're going to talk about scaling in. I've got a nice example plotted out here on the chart. We can see a down move coming to an end. We then have a bullish breaker structure, and then we have a continuation to the upside. So hopefully from what we've learned so far, you will see that we do have a few buying opportunities, obviously using the demand zones and the market structure. The first one is going to be here. So entry one would be taken really after the initial reversal. So once we see the bullish breaker structure, we could then look for a bounce from this demand zone to enter our first position. So the first position brings a potential 10.8 R on this position. Okay, so we have a potential 10.8 times our risk if the target is hit. So this is all good. 10.8 times your risk is already brilliant. But what we can actually do to improve our results and to actually get better performance is scale into the position. Now, as you'll see, a lot of the times markets do come back and fill that inefficiency, which allows us to actually get in extra positions without adding any other risk, like this. The reason we can get in without adding risk is because by the time we enter this position, this initial position can actually be risk-free, which means we then have potential for 21R at only 1% risk, okay? And if this trade is stopped out, we will lose our 1%, and this one will be stopped out at break even. So we still only have 1% risk running on the trade, but we now have 21R potential gain, just because we added another position at a logical level, in line with the market structure, in line with imbalances, inefficiency, and supply and demand. So when the trade then progresses, what we can do is look for logical points to add scale-ins. We only want to be taking them if they're good enough to be taking as standalone trades. That's essentially what they are. Standalone trades following the market structure that we can continue to add to our positions without adding any risk, but with adding a lot of profit potential. So after this initial run we had here, a new demand zone formed, we could then see if the price taps into here, if we can add a third entry. In this instance, a 6.4R entry. So at the moment, we actually have 27.4R potential gain if the trade hits the take profit and only 1% risk running on the whole position. So we've actually turned 1% risk into a 27.4R winner by the time the target is done. Scaling in doesn't have to be complicated. It simply follows the structure and simply follows everything we've spoken about. But when you're in a trade, just remain vigilant that you may be able to enter another trade following on from the one you're already in to maximize your profit potential, because the market is oftentimes going to give you logical reasons to get in, just like what we're seeing here. So that is the idea of scaling in. Now, not every trade is going to work out perfectly. Not every trade is going to hit the take profit. So how do we actually manage our stop losses to make sure we get the most out of every single trade we take? So now we're going to look at how you can ensure a win even if the market doesn't go all the way to your target. So sticking with the initial three entries we just spoke about on the scaling in page, what we're going to do now is show you how I would go ahead and manage my stop loss to make sure that we can get the best out of every trade. Now, as you'll know, we can move stop losses after we've entered a trade. I think we spoke about this in the risk management section. You should always move your stop loss to break even when possible to make sure that winners don't turn into losers. So what we can actually do to take that step further and to make sure we profit even when a trade doesn't go our way is scale our stop loss. So let's imagine this is my stop loss for now. After we've entered our first initial position and it started moving forward, what we can then do is move stop to break even. When the market then forms a new higher low, we can shift the stop loss underneath that higher low, okay? And obviously if we enter another position, we will then still have the 1% risk on the move from this initial one. But every time we then go and break structure to the upside and continue with the trend, after a new higher low forms, we can readjust our stop loss under that higher low. So after this higher high, we get a new higher low, we can move the stop losses under that higher low. Now, if then the market comes and takes that stop out, we will have still taken about 5% profit off these positions and still be, closing the day good. So as we can see, we make another higher high, another higher low comes in. So what we can then do at this point, when this higher low forms, is move the stop to here. Now, obviously, if we're scaling into another position, we've got 1% risk on this, but just as a general idea, we're going to have around 7% profit if we close on these two. So a stop loss here would give us 7% minus 1%, 6% profit for the day. If then the market moves to the upside again and forms another higher low, we can go and move the stop to that level. So at this point, we've got a higher high form once again. We have a higher low, so we can move the stops there. Now at this point, if the market decides it doesn't want to go to our target and instead wants to come through and take us out, we will have closed out on the initial position, 1.2%, on the second position, 4.8%, and on the third position, 5.3%. So we've got 4.8 plus 1.2. So we've got 6% on these positions plus another 5.3. So we have a total of 11.3% profit, even though the trade only got halfway to target before tapping us out. So this is how we can actually manage our stops to make sure we make a lot of profit, even if a trade doesn't go all the way to targets. Now, in the final video in this section, which is coming up in a second, I'm going to show you an example I took very, very recently to filming this on EURUSD, which followed this very similar structure. Now, I didn't go for scale-ins on the move, but what I did do is manage the stop and make sure that I pulled a very nice profit out of the market, even though it didn't fulfill my target. It's got some great examples of scale-in locations as well, though, so you'll see the potential live in the market.